Hello FPLers and welcome back to the FPL Crypto channel. It's been a long break. International break is coming to a close as we hone in on game week 5. It feels like forever since we've been chatting all things FPL, but in this video I'm going to review game week 4, which turned out to be a complete disaster, an absolute shocking game week for my own team. I'll also add to my watch list, and then there'll be some hot takes. A couple of things that I've kind of drawn from the last 4 game weeks, the opening 4 game weeks of the season. At the end of the video, then I'll look at my team lineup, locked in as much as it can be locked in for game week 5. As you can see there, I've added a couple of Villa boys to the photo, the intro photo, because of their 7-2 walloping of Liverpool in game week 4, which was just, testament to the randomness of the results in the last few game weeks. We've seen it before with the likes of Leicester knocking 5 past Man City. You had United getting stuffed by Spurs 6-1 recently. There's just been a lot of unusual results, a lot of unpredictability so far this FPL season, and the hot takes is really kind of looking at that and if we can draw upon any conclusions or some lessons, rules to take forward into our decision making. I'll look at reluctantly I'm going to look at my game week 4 performance. It was an absolute shocker. As I said, game week rank was 5.7 million, which moved my overall rank right back to 800k from the 70k the week before. Really bad game week. One of the worst I think I've had in recent years, definitely in recent memories. I'm trying to wipe this one from my memory though as quick as possible, which is why I'm not going to dwell on the result too much. There was really nothing for me across the board. Defensively, I had negative scores because of those huge, not upset results in terms of Man United, but the Liverpool Villa game was just a really hard one to grasp. -1 for Trent and -2 for Shaw, which meant that from my 4 defensive options, I scored a grand total of 0 points. Overall, I got 32 points. And that was actually net 28 because as you remember, I took a -4 last week. So yeah, not good. But like as I've said to a couple of friends, I do actually like the backbone of my team, even though it was a miserable result in terms of points. Kevin De Bruyne, Mo Salah, Harvey Barnes with a goal disallowed, Danny Ings and Dominic Calvert-Lewin are all tremendous assets to own this season, and I'm not going to get too caught up on the results of just one game week. Right, let's just take a look at the watch list. So I've added 5 people here to the watch list. Solly Marsh for Brighton. He has a goal and assist so far this season, but he's in around that nice price point of 5 million, which might be important for me because I've got the likes of Ollie Burke, who might not get much game time now that Ryan Brewster has joined Sheffield United. As you can see at the bottom of the list, there is Ryan Brewster. He's on the watch list. I need to take a look at him. He's 4.5 million listed, so it could be a very good third striker option for a lot of teams. A lot of managers on wildcards might be looking at him if they want to pile the funds back into the midfield 5, including myself. St. Maximum, who I've sold, is back on the watches. He's down to 5.3 million now, and he did have a very impressive display for Newcastle with a goal and assist. Antonio for West Ham. Now, I'll get into this a little later because I know that fixtures aren't great for West Ham, but Mitchell Antonio, stats-wise, is showing good numbers, and he had a very good end of last season. So he had a price drop, but he's in my thoughts. Ollie Watkins comes on. He's 5.9 million for Villa, and he got his hat-trick against Liverpool. So even though that result might be a bit of a one-off, freakish result, you can't ignore the fact that Villa scored 7 goals against one of the best defences in the league last season. So Watkins comes in. Some notable removals. Well, I've only actually removed 1 player. Now, there's a couple of players that are really treading thin ice. Martial's coming off because he's suspended. There's plenty more I could remove. Jordan Pickford is one of them at 5 million. and I could think of several others. That Reece James, for instance, who's been getting rotated now. There's a lot of players that could come off, but I'm not going to just do a complete butchering based on the results of Game Week 4. I'm going to keep as many on that watch list and really maintain all my options going forward. I'll skip through them all now. So goalkeepers are on screen now. You'll see the defenders first, and then we'll move into the mids. All these prices might not be accurate because at the time of recording, some of them have changed and some of them are from last week too. But in terms of the watch list, they're all the same. Mids and then forwards here, and that's pretty much it. Right, this is what I want to talk about. So I've done some hot takes. Hot takes really is just like, I haven't thought about it too much. I took a break from Twitter and FPL Live for the last 2 weeks to just kind of keep a calm head and not make any rash transfers, and absorb as much as I can in terms of maybe some learnings I can take from the results of Game Week 4 and everything that's happened so far this season. So I have 3 hot takes and 3 elements of this season that I'm going to try to incorporate into my thinking in the next few game weeks. Hot take number 1 is the fixture is less important. Now, you'll see on screen the latest fixture difficulty rankings that have been updated by the Premier League. They do it weekly now. And there has been an element of unpredictability to this season. That's quite obvious based and apparent based on all the results and the unexpected results. Usually when I'm looking at taking a player in, I kind of categorize it into 5 different sections. So I've got the form, fixtures in there, I got stats, fitness, and then, like the eye test, so watching the actual football game. They're the 5 main categories that I look at while deciding whether or not a player should be in my FPL team. Now, there seems to be less weight on the fixture difficulty, because of there's essentially lots of random results. So as you can see, the updated FDR that I've just thrown onto the screen there, I just screen grabbed that off the FPL website. There's a lot of it's ranked 1 to 5. 3 is the grey, which is like the middling uncertainty fixture, and you can see there's a lot of grey in there, which really kind of pinpoints that the Premier League themselves know that all their Opta stats and data gathered together doesn't conclusively push a team towards any sort of level of difficulty, because it's just been unusual so far. The results speak for themselves. 2 examples of how this might change my thinking, in this instance using players of my watch list. If you look at Crystal Palace, they have a lot of green fixtures coming up from Game Week 5 onwards. They've got Brighton and Fulham the next 2. Leeds and Burnley are in there too, Game Weeks 8 and 9. And that might make me a little less likely to go for Wilf Zaha. Usually I would look at that and think, oh, Zaha, 7.2 million striker, out of position, in form, scored a couple of times already this season. He's in my team and the fixtures will look amazing. I'm all go. But now I'm a little less likely to do that because of the reliability of the fixtures and how they kind of indicate FPL point scoring capabilities. On the other extreme side of it, then, you've got Antonio for West Ham. If you look at the bottom, you'll see that West Ham play Spurs away and then Man City home. Essentially 3 very difficult fixtures coming up. And I'm a little more likely to go for someone like Antonio in a team that have extremely difficult fixtures, but also the fact that there's an unpredictability element, as I said, to the results. The fixture side of it just has less importance and less weight for me in terms of decision making, and that's something I might incorporate into my transfers too. I'm not going to rule out someone like Michel Antonio or Zaha for that matter, but when I look at the fixtures, I'm less likely to go on fixtures alone based on what their team have ahead of them. So that's hot take number 1. Hot take number 2 is short-term injuries need to be addressed with a solid bench. Now, this is quite well known. Everyone kind of knows that your bench should be able to come in. That's what they're there for. You've got 4 players, 1 goalkeeper, 3 outfield players, and they need to be drafted in to cover for unexpected absentees. Well, I've got the haunting example of Heung-min Son, a player that I sold and many others did last week. He had a 25% chance of playing, but came off at halftime the game before against Newcastle. Manager's comments, everything leaned towards him being out for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, but with the international break, that would have meant just the 1 fixture. It was never revealed as a long-term absence. So your bench cover would have sorted this problem, put it that way. So for me, selling shouldn't really have been the correct route, and unfortunately I did sell him, and he punished me because I followed the crowd, as many others sold him as well, and he scored 18 points. Now, of course, not expected either. He was at Old Trafford, and Spurs weren't even favourites to win that game, never mind score 6 goals. But that's the point. The only point I'm going to make. If I had to use my bench, or even had a decent bench to utilize to bring in, I would have had more confidence in putting Son on the bench there and using another player instead. But my main point, that was the extreme version of how it could punish you and how you should probably be using your bench to cover these short-term absentees. But my main point is COVID. So COVID is wreaking havoc really across, especially during the international scene. Players and teams flying all over the place, and all sorts of outbreaks and positive tests coming back, which is really affecting the game. And as you know, players need to self-isolate, or if they're infected themselves, they need to move away from training and everything around the match days. It's like they just have no involvement for 10 to 14 days. But they're only going to miss 1 game if they have to self-isolate, or max of 2 games. It's bad luck, but a solid bench kind of counteracts this bad luck, and that's again what I need to talk about. So it should keep you from wasting your transfer, put it that way. It's well, so again, Son is very extreme, but these short-term injuries need to be addressed with a solid bench, as simple as that. So when I'm examining my team now, I'm looking at the likes of Ollie Burke, for instance. Ollie Burke, as I said already, his place is definitely not solidified now. I've got Tyrese Mitchell, who's a threat now that Pierre Van Aanholt is back in the running, and I just need to have more confidence in my bench options. So it might be a case of spreading some funds in there and bringing them up a level in my own situation. Hot take number 3. In general, patience is rewarded. Not taking hits is rewarded. And I sent a tweet out earlier, very recently, kind of demonstrating this so far this season. So we've got 4 high scoring FPL assets right there: Son, Vardy, Wilson and Kane, and we've got the cumulative transfers out. So you can see Heung-min Son has been sold by 2 million managers so far in the first 4 game weeks. That's 2 million transfers. It's not managers, 2 million transfers, which is like, he's the highest scoring player in the game, 45 points. If you had to just stuck with him the whole way through, played the exercise, some patience, you really would have grabbed all those points and not missed out on some of those hauls. Vardy as well, 34 points. Wilson, 34 points, and then Harry Kane, 44 points, and all of them have upwards of 400,000 transfers out. Evidence of patience being rewarded. That's essentially it. Now, as a caveat to all that, you've got the likes of Timo Werner. He is the top transferred out player cumulatively over the first 4 game weeks, and he has done very little. He's got a couple of assists, that's it. So in his case, it is kind of warranted, the transfer out, the patience game. I have been quite selective here, but and don't get me wrong, taking hits can be rewarded in some instances, and it cannot be avoided in other cases too. My but being less impulsive and playing the game slower is it's proving to be the way this season so far. And it's also a lot less painful to play this way, for instance. And going back hesitantly again to Heung-min Son last week, who I got rid of, taking a hit to, that cost me 22 FPL points. And when you're going to be watching these games and you want to get a sense of enjoyment out of it, think about what transfer you're about to make and how that might ruin your weekend in hindsight if it goes badly. And sometimes it's good. It's a good thing for your own well-being to choose the option that has the less painful consequences. And I know that, and it all depends on your character and your personality. Some people it works for, some people it doesn't. For me, I like to kind of lean, if it's a 50-50, I like to lean towards the option that is less painful. Put it that way. Just something to think about. Right, with all that in mind, I'm going to reveal my team for Game Week 5. And surprise, surprise, there's no transfers. Now, I haven't listened to any press conferences yet. The last of the international games have just wrapped up recently, so I don't know what the situation is with injuries and players returning from duty, etc. Manager press conferences will reveal a lot of that information for me and clear things up. But as things stand, I'm not going to make any transfers. I'm going to roll the transfer to next week. There's just too much uncertainty in terms of the team form and also player fitness. Little niggles picked up here and there. And it's important to note, even though this crowd did really bad for me last week, the way things are going, last week's mugs can become next week's heroes, and it can all just flip upside down. And the only kind of flag that I see there that could affect any sort of thinking now in the press conferences is Kevin De Bruyne. But as demonstrated earlier, the patience game is, if you want to keep him long term, you should just make sure you have a decent first sub there, or at least someone who can come in and cover him for one game week. In that respect, I have Mitchell, who hopefully starts against Brighton at home. So the main decision for me here was just kind of placing the armband on the correct player, and I'm going to put it on Salah. And De Bruyne definitely would have been a contender if he was confirmed fit, but that's not the case. So that little bit of doubt is making me just lean towards Salah in the Merseyside derby. And it's a big game. I know it's the early kickoff, and there's this myth out there that you should never back the early kickoff for your captaincy. But no, I don't pay any attention to stuff like that. So confidently on Salah after his 2 goals in Game Week 4. And he's just a very safe asset. I think that it's going to be split this week. I know there's a lot of other decent options out there. If you own Raheem Sterling, Sadio Mane, there's too many to mention. I'm only focusing on my own team here. So obviously if you guys have any dilemmas yourselves, pop them in the comments and I'll give you my own 2 cents. Harvey Barnes has a vice captaincy there, and that's really because of the uncertainty of KDB. I feel like he will play, and he has a good home fixture, so he was unfortunate too to have that goal disallowed last game week. So that's me locked in, folks. Nothing too dramatic, no complete overhaul of this team just yet. Now, I will be tempted to hit that wildcard button if things really, really, really don't go to plan in the next couple of game weeks. But there's a lot that can be fixed with 2 transfers. And I have I'm looking at the likes of Luke Shaw, Aaron Ramsdale, Pudence in midfield, and Timo Werner as the players on the chopping block. That's the areas of my team that really need to be fixed. Now, Ollie Burke also to some extent. But I think Timo Werner is the guy who really needs to prove his worth this week. I'm tied up on 9.3 million worth of funds, and they're funds I really, really need to use elsewhere in my team to upgrade. So a lot of players with a lot of things to prove this week. It'll be an interesting one. I'm just so happy to have the soccer back. Good luck to you guys for Game Week 5. I hope you get some green arrows, unlike me, the last 2 game weeks, and we can get back on track. Chat to you all next week.